Who's your money on to be the next UKIP leader? Paddy Power, you beauty!
Michael Heaver here for Westmonster. I'm with Henry Bolton UKIP leadership.
Good morning.
Good morning. First thing, Henry. Obviously, what's your background? A lot of people may not know much about you. Could you give us a bit about your background?
Well, I'm a former tank soldier. I was later commissioned into the infantry, so I was an infantry officer. I left the army in 1990, joined the police, but also stayed in the territorial army and mobilised to go out to Bosnia as a TA officer commanding regular troops in a strategic intelligence unit in Bosnia for a year. I've done a variety of things since. I was Chief of Operations for the ceasefire operations in Macedonia in 2001. I was Crisis Management Advisor for the Albanian Prime Minister. I've led UK efforts to disrupt transnational organised crime across the Balkans. I was the district governor for the United Nations in Kosovo for a year, so establishing and then running as its president and CEO local government. I was the head of global border programs for what was then 56 countries of the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe, which is the world's largest intergovernmental security organisation, and I double-hatted as senior advisor to the Secretary General. And more latterly, I was chief planner for EU Common Security and Defence Policy, with particular responsibility for Ukraine and Libya. So a little bit of a window on how the European Union works. And I still lecture, actually, for the Austrian Defence Academy and the Swedes and others on the decision-making processes in the EU. So, yeah, I know how the EU works.
Yeah. Well, how's the campaign going anyway, then?
I think it's going quite well. I entered it slightly late. I entered it because I looked at the people who were standing, and I actually thought that whilst there's some very good people standing, I felt that they didn't necessarily have the leadership background in the broad array of areas that they needed to have it to be successful. I mean, I believe that the party is at a critical moment. Of course, this leadership election has to work, but it's also critical for the country. If we're not able to organise ourselves and project ourselves effectively into British politics very rapidly, the Conservatives are going to have the run with Brexit, and we can see them slipping almost every day on Brexit. You know, sort of basically selling our foreign policy and our defence assets to the EU just the day before yesterday. So you know, the only party that can provide a proper Brexit opposition is us, and it's particularly important because it's not just about getting out, it's about making a success of it afterwards, making sure that we're sort of secure, we're trading, we're building up our economy and so on as well post-Brexit, and Brexit is going to set us up for success later on, so we've got to get it right.
Talking about the EU and defence, what did you make of Jean-Claude Juncker's comments about the European Defence Cooperation pushing forward for 2025 and all the rest of it? How big a threat do you think that is?
It's a massive risk because, firstly, the defence policy of the European Union, even if you say, let's, you know, and there are people who say, well, isn't that sensible to coordinate and mutually support in the area of security? And I would say it is, but you've got to remember that that defence policy in the European Union, like it is in any country, is actually subordinate to the foreign policy. And if we're out of the European Union, we're not going to be sitting at the table shaping EU foreign policy. So if we give assets to the European Union in defence and security, we've got to remember that we're not going to be shaping or being able to scrutinise how those assets are used, because Brussels is going to fix that, the other 27 are going to fix that post-Brexit. So this is a very misguided effort on the part of the UK to support the EU. Jean-Claude Juncker's approach is one of expansionism, ever deeper centralisation. And, you know, do we want to be part of that? Of course we don't. So the more the government slides on this, the more we're going to get sort of sucked in to the EU whilst not being able to shape it. It's crazy. It just doesn't make sense. We're far better off, if we want to influence the EU, build up our own capabilities, be dominant in our own foreign policy, and that way we are going to influence the environment that the EU operates on. That's a far more effective way of doing it.
Now, in terms of the leadership hustings, what are members telling you? What messages are coming through? What are you saying? What's your pitch that differentiates you from the other candidates?
Okay, a few questions in that one question. What are members saying? Well, first of all, members are saying that they feel that they've been isolated by the leadership of the party over the last months, year or so. They feel as though they've been disconnected. Decisions are being made within the party by a clique at the top, and that they've not been consulted. They don't know what's going on until it's a fait accompli. I think that's a valid concern. There hasn't been good internal communications. Certainly not recently, so that needs to be improved. I think other things more broadly that are coming out are there is a great concern over immigration, increasing concern I would say, and actually it's even stronger in some parts of the country than others, but it's a concern across the board, and that links with the Islamic question. So there's a lot of concern about the loss of British culture and way of life in that regard. So these are themes, but Brexit still comes through loud and clear as the main priority, getting that right. And members feel that the party has been quiet on that issue, too quiet. In terms of where I stand on it, I mean, I think Brexit, as I've already explained, is critically important for our country to make sure it's done in a way that launches us as a global trading nation. A prosperous, secure and confident nation going forward. So it has to be done right. So that remains our core task, our core purpose. And that, in that way, perhaps I don't differ with the others. The other thing, though, I think, is that vast swathe of the population who are left without a voice in local government. Their voice isn't heard in development planning, isn't heard in policing. They're just ignored. And I think we are, as a party, in a fantastic position to give them a voice, because we're a bold party. We're prepared to stick our necks out and say things that others aren't prepared to say. We are prepared to say, look, we don't necessarily fit into a political dogma. If you're suffering a particular problem in a particular community, let's find the right solution for that, regardless of whether it might be traditionally a socialist problem or a right-wing, a socialist solution or a right-wing solution. If it's the right solution for that community, it's the right solution. But I think the biggest thing there is recognising that if we're going to deliver anything positive, we must organise the party. We must get more professional in what we do. We must support our candidates a lot better. We must prepare them for their campaigns, support them in their campaigns, and support them once in office. We must enhance the communication amongst everybody, and we must involve members more in policy development. So these are all things that I've been talking about during the hustings and in my campaign.
Okay, well, you've been quite outspoken. You've made some comments about under the wrong leadership we could swing away from our traditional secular values and stances towards something far darker. You said the last thing UKIP needs to be is to become the UK Nazi Party. Is that aimed towards any particular candidate at all?
No.
Give us a bit more info on
it's not aimed, and it really is not aimed towards any particular candidate. There are candidates that would seek or are seeking to pursue a particular agenda, a particular set of policies, a fairly narrow set of policies, narrow objectives, if you like, which are valid to discuss. And indeed, the points raised by these candidates are absolutely valid points and need to be addressed, no question. However, if we become a niche party and we go down the road of being a hard-line movement dedicated to either anti-Islam or quoting others now, the overthrow of the Westminster elite and our Parliament, our Westminster system of government, then we are at risk of really becoming not just a radical party, but a revolutionary party in a slightly worrying sense. We are also not going to be taken credibly as in other areas such as Brexit. That's the reality. We may not like the reality, but the reality is that if the media, the public at large, do not see us as a credible party that can deliver on a broad platform, if they see us more as a niche, really sort of kind of revolutionary party, then we're not going to have the means, the traction to deliver on such things as Brexit and our future prosperity and security. I reiterate, though, that it's not to say that we have not got a problem with immigration or Islam, and I've been quite hard line in what I think we should build into the party's policies to deal with that. And I also think we need to go down the route of really exploring electoral reform, and there's a lot of potential there for some elements of direct democracy in there too. So it's not that I'm saying these are irrelevant issues that shouldn't be discussed. They very much are relevant and they very much should be discussed, but they need to be in a broad context.
Other than Brexit, what would be, what would a Henry Bolton UKIP, what would you be campaigning, and what would be the big message going out if you did win the leadership?
You mean policy issues?
Yeah, on a policy issue other than Brexit.
Well, already I've been holding the government to account in the last week or so over the comments that we discussed earlier about the government selling down our foreign policy and the military sort of off to the EU. We've talked about Juncker. I've talked about the need to address what one of the other candidates would call cultural Marxism, the sort of the extreme left, and the way that our history is, they're attempting to rewrite our history, pull down our monuments, change who we are. Well, if they do that, then they're going to dictate our future, and it's going to be a false future, which isn't going to build our nation or our confidence. So these are all issues that I've already raised. I think what I'm going to do, and as I say, I've already started doing it, is hold the government to account effectively on Brexit. That's the first thing. The second thing is to start giving everybody a voice, and that's mobilising and supporting our branches and our regional level. So these are the core things that I'm going to engage on. Now, when we talk about particular policies, if anybody wants to ask me what my position is on healthcare or education or defence or policing or local government, fine. But that's my opinion. And my opinion is relevant, I agree, but I've got a design for involving the party members in developing party policy. First of all, I would revert immediately to the 2015 manifesto as the baseline. Secondly, my spokesman would be supported by groups of up to 10 people that are drawn from their membership because of subject matter expertise. So they're able to assist that spokesman in having a comprehensive sort of suite of expertise for that portfolio. Anybody in the party will be able to propose policy. It'll go up to that group, it'll be assessed, and if considered valid, then they'll develop it into a party white paper for approval or not at conference. Now, what I'm saying there is, the members are the party. Without the members, we wouldn't have a party. They need to be involved in policy development. So here, let's have that debate, let's have that discussion about what we do with healthcare. But the start point is the 2015 manifesto.
And finally, if I just ask you, obviously as a sort of expert on security, how do you see the jihadi threat? How do you think we should combat it? How do you assess the government's performance on that?
3 questions. First of all, the jihadist threat is serious, and I think getting a great deal more serious. Islamic State are under huge pressure in Iraq and in Syria. They have been in Libya. These sort of organisations need to demonstrate that they are active and effective in order to recruit and to gain donors. It's the same as a political party, really. So they need to demonstrate that they're engaging. Now, the obvious way for them to do that is to embark upon a serious campaign in Europe and in this country. First point is we have to secure our borders. We have no national border strategy. There's nothing to bring cohesion together on our borders, and there's no plan for our borders going forward. Even Albania has a border strategy. I know because I helped write it. But we do not, which is a massive hole in our security. We're cutting back on policing, and one of the first things to go in the cuts of policing is the intelligence capability. The backroom functions are being lost. So there are a range of things that we can do. And I think we also need to look at the foreign funding here. We need to stop Qatari and Saudi and Wahhabi funding of independent schools and of mosques. We need to ensure, rather like a Church of England vicar, that imams are trained here, they're funded here, they're licensed here, they understand the British way of life, British culture, and we need to start to assimilate our immigrant communities a lot more effectively into British society. Anybody who carries a British passport should understand what it means to be British, and it's not about getting getting some sort of welfare payments or something like that. It's about being British and buying into the British identity. And on that, I think we should revamp the Treason Act, take it out of the Public Order Act, and make it fit for purpose to hold anybody who embarks upon planning, preparing, or committing a terrorist offence. They are traitors. They are not terrorists, they're not criminals, they are traitors. And anyone, but at the moment the law isn't fit for use in that purpose, it needs to be. I don't want some guy deciding that he's going to go down in history amongst some sort of community in Iraq or somewhere as a martyr because he's blown himself up in somewhere in this country. That person should be fully aware that they will be labelled forever traitor if they've got a British passport. If they haven't, if they're a foreign national, we need to get rid of them immediately. But at the moment we have a problem with immigration in that we're part of something called the Dublin III Agreement, which is a European Union agreement, and it means that we can't, as we should be able to under international law, send people who come to this country, try and enter this country from the European Union illegally. For example, they get in the back of a truck and come from France. We're not allowed to send them back to France. We're only allowed to send them back to the country through which they entered the European Union. And most of the time we've got no clue as to which country that is, so we can't send them anywhere. And if they're, I don't know, Ethiopian, but they claim to be from Eritrea and they've got no documents, neither Ethiopia nor Eritrea will take them back. We have no choice but to keep them because of that Dublin III Agreement. So we need to withdraw from that immediately.
Henry Bolton, thank you very much.
Thank you.